All right. So, as I'm loading this, all right, so there's educational games, simulation, and virtual worlds. So, they all share some characteristics. It's difficult to find a pure experience of any genre. So, simulations have game-like qualities. Virtual worlds may be used as a simulation. So, the educational games designed for learning is a subset of both play and fun, is sometimes referred to as a serious game. Um, so, there's different types of games: action, adventure, construction building, strategy. So let's talk about a case scenario. So Joe sits down at a computer and logs into Strat World. It's a virtual world that enables the user to create his or own team, then compete against each other, that other teams that created players. So the developers of Strat World created interesting challenges, intellectual force, and the teams strive to solve before each other. So Joe logs on. He's presented with a three-dimensional view of a forest. Directly in front of him is a 3D figure that looks like Joe. But of course, Joe added broader shoulders, a more rugged face, better skin. This is his avatar, his representation of himself in his world. Joe can change the avatar's appearance as he wishes. The members of one of his opposing team appears to be a mass of glowing tubes, and Joe thinks that's strange. So he's recruiting people for his virtual team, and he ducks into his inventory and dons his manager's jacket, Joe's team, that is on the back of the jacket, and he's proud to wear it. And he gives copies of the jacket to people in his team. And so using the arrow keys and stuff, Joe begins to make his avatar walk down the forest trail, and he's looking to recruit an ogre for his team to beef up their physical offensive. Ogres are big and strong and perfect for the task, but Joe is nervous. He's never been to this part of the world, and explorations in new areas can be fraught with peril. And you're like, oh my gosh, Denise, why are you reading this to me? But I'm just give me a minute. So after being, he comes across an ogre, and he's picking his teeth, and Joe says, I need someone to smash through things for my team. Are you interested? What's in it for me? Said the ogre, thumping his chest with the remains of the sorry sapling. Darn, that was a good toothpick. The chirps of birds, the drone insects, and the foliage are all normal background noise here, and they suddenly stop, so Joe picks up an environmental clue that this is dangerous. Joe ponders the question. He knows he's talking to a non-player character, one that seems to have a brain behind his 3D facade, but in reality, he has very clever programming attached to it so that it can seem to carry on an intelligent conversation. Some companies call this artificial intelligence, but both the creators in these environments and the scholars who study them hotly debate the proper use of that term. Joe also knows that the world is constructed so that he has to balance his profits from game wins with overhead costs, such as player salaries and equipment maintenance. He needs to make an offer to the ogre. An offer too little will insult him, and there'll be a fight. And Joe's avatar could die and be an inconvenience. And a generous offer might be accepted, but it could bankrupt Joe over time. So this is a complex problem-solving situation, right? So you guys are thinking, oh my gosh, what does World of Warcraft have to do with nursing? Well, because listen to how real Joe is getting into this virtual world. And how you have to come on with these, real interactive moments. So the story is fictional, right? And you think, well, okay, obviously this is fictional. What does that have to do with nursing? Again, you're manipulating events for desired outcome, which is what we do sometimes. So we use a simulation and attempts to create a real life set of conditions or events with as much fidelity as possible. So what do we mean by fidelity? Truth to life. So there's simulations develop cognition, ethics and roles, so learning to know skills, learning to be skills, and application, learning how to do skills. And unlike games, the simulations are not necessarily designed to be fun, right? So when we talk about game mechanics are simply put the rules and limitations in which a game takes place. And it's imperative that the rules are clearly stated. So people voluntarily play games all the time, whereas simulations aren't always fun, correct? So in virtual worlds, we talked about this. You got the 3D avatar. So choosing between educational games, simulations, and virtual worlds. So games are goal-oriented, are competitive, and have a lighthearted, fantastical nature to it. So virtual worlds in education are best used for educational purposes that occur when there's a need for an immersive experience. So for you to really get it, to know what it feels like, the different social interactions. For example, in a virtual world of Second Life, one university developed a virtual hacienda for students to learn Spanish. And they interact with the environment, they speak in Spanish, and it's going to be more real time than it would be just practicing in the classroom. So the 3D world often mimics the real world environment, although it may include impossible abilities such as flying. Well, obviously we're not going to do that, but you can use that with disaster training, etc. Oh, let me get to this previous. Virtual worlds generally lend themselves to exploratory learning and social interaction. And simulations are also goal-oriented, and the competition is generally subdued, versus games have kind of a competitive nature to it. So we talked about that. So the future of simulation games and virtual worlds in nursing education. The use of simulation games and virtual worlds, they're becoming less expensive to produce and consume. So game-developed engines are now available at a cost that many users can afford. And they have built-in development tools, an attempt by the game producer to use free labor to extend their products. And companies are tapping mobile devices too to train as well. Okay, so now I want to show you a little video on simulation and games in nursing education.
I'd like to give you an overview of a pilot. Hi, this is Kelly Connor from Boise State University Department of Nursing. Today I'd like to give you an overview of a pilot project that was conducted with colleagues at University of Auckland and Western Wyoming Community College to determine the feasibility and the potential for using multi-user virtual reality environments, in this case Second Life, to run nursing simulation scenarios for nursing education. Let me give you a tour of the setting that we used. This is the lab space that we used. There are spaces for students to sit and observe the scenario, although they can move their camera controls anywhere that they'd like to be in the room. Here's the simulation space that was used. In this case, when you look around, there's one-way curtain. The purpose of the one-way curtains is to help achieve the feeling of being in a patient room, making it a little bit more believable that the nurse is in there giving one-on-one patient care. So now we're switching to a different video clip. In this clip, I'm actually the instructor, but I'm pretending to be the patient. I'm in the bed holding my baby. I'm setting my microphone levels so that everything's heard correctly in the local chat environment. My significant other, who's actually my colleague from Boise State, is going to come sit in beside me, and then my colleagues from New Zealand are also present. The student's been given information about the report that she's receiving, and in a second here you're going to see me adjust my camera controls to see how I'm going to see this environment play out. Everybody sets their own camera controls, so I as the instructor can't dictate what people see as far as their camera. So if you were a student sitting in those back chairs, you can actually adjust your camera so that you're looking directly on top of the patient, so you can really see without interfering in this environment. So now as the instructor, I'm picking out my instructor HUD. This is one way to be the instructor to manipulate the environment in Second Life. There are others, but David Bodley created this. He did a fabulous job. So as you can see on the upper left of your screen, it says Nursing Research. There's actually, I as the instructor am wearing this on my avatar. So I can change the blood pressure, the temperature, I can moan, have an IV started, I can do various things so that if the student were to check my blood pressure, then they would see what I just programmed in here. So just to recap, I'm the one that sees and adjusts this nursing research display, but it's up to the student to take my blood pressure in order to see the results. I can answer questions on that if you'd like later. When we ran our first pilot test of our Second Life project, we recognized that the students did a fabulous job asking the right questions and doing the assessments verbally, but they really didn't have an idea on how to manipulate the environment, which is really what makes the Second Life project special, is how you can manipulate and use your environment. So what we did is we actually created a room where a student can come in and practice some of the technology that's available so that when they are in the simulation scenario, they can use it effectively. So here's the practice room. You just saw me go over there. I touched the sink, I washed my hands, and now I've raised and lowered the bed covers, and here I am. I decided I was going to check a blood pressure, so I hit check. The blood pressure cuff came out. There is an instructor on the other side that programmed the blood pressure, so I get what I see. Same with the IV pole. Touching it, you have the radial dial button, give you some choices on